it was easier to make a lot of money, and it was also easier to lose a lot of money. In the pit, when everybody can see, I'm short 30 contracts, and it's $30,000 every 10 points, and everybody knows I'm stuck. Everybody knows Susquehanna's stuck. We rallied 150 points within a minute, 2 minutes, and before you knew it, we were back at the next limit. He made $40 million on that trade. He looked at me and said, "You short? Yeah, how many? 15. So 15. That's a signal for 15. Sell you 15. All right. Wrote him up on my card. He gave me a $150,000 trade. He didn't have to.
Hey everyone, Sam here, back with another episode of Trading Tips presented to you by Investors Underground. Now, tonight's guest needs no introduction. He's famously known as Pax, a trader with decades of experience who got his start in the pits of the CME. He's seen this game from just about every single angle. In this episode, he shares a ton of wisdom, great stories, timeless wisdom, and more than anything, it's just a fun conversation. So whatever you're doing, whether that's charting, driving, in the gym, going for a run, I promise this is a fun conversation that will bring a smile to your face. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Well, please welcome to the show. I'm extremely excited to welcome Pax, aka Matt, to the show. Pax, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Sam?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You are just one of those guys on Twitter that, like I was saying off camera, we don't trade similarly at all in terms of different markets, etc. But I just love pretty much every single one of your tweets. I just think you're one of the good guys out there. So it's an incredible honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks. This is the greatest business in the world, whether you trade futures or you trade stocks or, you're trading commodities. It's the greatest business in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so refreshing to hear that, I think, as well, because I think like sometimes it's very easy to get lost in the day. And I think sometimes, particularly as traders, you can define yourself whether you've had a red day, a green day, whatever, a monster day, or your mate's had a good day, you've had a crap day. And we can define ourselves actually by our performance, but also sometimes I think it's just really worth taking that moment to think, I'm exactly where I want to be, and I'm doing the most incredible thing that I could be doing as well.
When we value, how do I say this? When we define ourselves by our performance, that's a sticky little rabbit hole to fall down, and that stinks. I've done that for too much of my career. And whenever I define myself by my P&L, my life is in disarray. Just bad things are going to happen. I need to walk away. I need to step back. I need to take a few months off, few weeks off, few days off, few weeks off, few months off. If that's the case, I can lose a lot of money when I'm defining myself by my P&L.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I think we'll probably come on to that in a bit. But first, just by way of introduction to our audience, firstly, I know you just told me what Pax means, which I think is wonderful. If you could tell the audience as well, and just a little bit about yourself, and partly just share some of this incredible journey that you're on.
So my trading badge at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange was Pax, and I chose it because it means peace in Latin. So most guys, when we got our memberships or we got our seats, most people wanted to kind of get their initials or something like that. I wanted something that was a little bit more meaningful. My initials are AMK, but I wanted something a little bit more meaningful than that. So I chose, I was going to be a Catholic priest. I studied to be a Catholic priest in my mid-20s. I had started the Chicago Mercantile Exchange as a runner in 1988, making minimum wage. I walked out of the trading floor and I thought, this is the greatest place in the world. I don't know what's going on here, but I want to learn. The energy and everything that you've heard about the trading floors, especially then, was true. It was after the crash of '88, so the S&P was quiet, but it was still exciting and fun and new and gave me purpose in my life. I just graduated high school and I was driving a truck on the south side of Chicago, and I needed to find something. So a guy that grew up in my neighborhood, tough Italian Irish kid, ended up going down to the SIBO, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he was a multimillionaire. So I wanted to go do what he did. Pat Geronda. His name is Pat Geronda. So anyway, I had worked every job up. I learned how to do hand signals, everything that you see on TV, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I started to quote I worked in the Eurodollar market, and I started to quote the euros by, before there were domes, I'm looking at my screens. Behind me is just the wall. Before there were domes and you can trade on computers, there was somebody that had to tell you what the bid and offer was, and that was me. And you would flash orders to me, and I would take them by hand. And a good clerk is worth his weight in gold. And I was an arbitrage clerk in the front month euros. I worked for the busiest brokers and made a lot of money. And I was getting my seat. I was going to get my membership, and I was going to fill orders. And at that meeting, I raised my hand and I said, I got to talk to you before I sign this contract. And it's when I told, I came out of the closet, so to speak. I said, before I do this, I think I need to go and get this out of my system. And so I went to the seminary, and I spent 3.5 years studying to be a Catholic priest. And celibacy wasn't my thing. I wanted to be a dad. And, I was never more popular with women than when you're supposed to be celibate. So that wasn't, that didn't quite. So I went back to the work, and my mother got sick with lung cancer. And I took a leave of absence. Instead of going to Rome for my last 4 years of study, I ended up just going back to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And I was married within a year, had a baby within a year and a half, my first daughter, and I had gotten my seat. She was born in June of 97. I got my membership or my seat in August of 1997. And then I made the decision to, the floor was changing at the time. The euros, the Eurodollar pit, which is now SOFR, the SOFR contract. The euros were, the front month was changing, a lot of the volume going to the back months. So I didn't want to go in there, and I knew that I didn't want to fill orders. I didn't want to become a filling broker. They made a lot of money and they had great careers, but I wanted to be a trader. I wanted to be what we called a local. A local is an independent, we call them retail traders. I wanted to be an independent local trader. I didn't want to go into a pit where they're already, everybody was already established. Everybody had their spots, and you couldn't mess with it. Nobody could stand in your spot. Nobody could stand in his spot. Nobody could stand in my spot. It was important. Your real estate in the pit was important. I didn't want to. So the NASDAQ was a brand new contract. The NASDAQ started in April of 96. I think it was April. It was 1996. So I wanted to go into the new pit. I wanted to trade the new pit, and I wanted to grow with the new pit. So I went to the NASDAQ, and I helped build that futures contract into what it is now. We did 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 contracts a day when I first started. Open interest was only 1,200. I was a one-lot trader. The NASDAQ was $100 a tick when I started the trade. My seat lease was $3,200. I started off with $10,000 in my account. Before you knew it, I had $250 in my account, and I was looking to sign a deal with the prop group, not these funding companies, but an actual prop group. And that day I was smoking a cigarette, went outside and had a cigarette. I was talking to this young kid who was pretty well established in the NASDAQ. And I told him what I was going to do. And he said, don't do it. Go beg, borrow, and steal the money. This is going to be the last great pit before everything goes computerized. And we're going to be busy, and you're going to give half of what you make away for 3 years. You're going to regret it. So I walked onto the trading floor that afternoon, and the guy that backed me, the guy that I clerked for many years, the guy that backed me had this guy with him who I met with, who, he offered to teach me how to trade for $1,000 a week. He was going to teach me a way of trading. His exact words were, I'll teach you a way of trading that works on the floor, off the floor, anytime, anywhere in the world, which is what I'm known for, the opening range trade, the opening range breakout. So he taught me, and I told him, I reminded him I have $250 in my account. I can't pay you $1,000 a month or $1,000 a week. I'm bartending to pay my mortgage 6 nights a week, getting home at 1, 2 in the morning and having to get up and be downtown at 7. It was kind of a heady, difficult time, but he said, you can pay me at the end of the month. Listen to what I'm telling you, listen to what I tell you, and you'll pay me at the end of the month. I did. I paid my seat lease at the end of the month, $3,200. I paid him his $4,000. The next month, I quit my bartending job. Within my first 6 months of working with them, I made $500,000, and then I was on my way to my first $1 million. the only times I've failed, Sam, the only times that I failed is when I start fading markets, start scalping markets, and I leave my process behind, both on the floor, off the floor. Start to sell rallies, start to buy breaks, start to, try to be a mean reversion trader, which I'm not good at, a reversal trader I'm not good at. Ultimately, I don't know anybody that's good at it over a long period of time. I don't know anybody that's made. I know a lot of people made millions of dollars. I don't know too many have kept it. So, I don't know. That's kind of a brief history, maybe not so brief history on.
It's such an incredible story. And I've just got to go back to the pit though, because I don't know, there's a certain romance with it, I think, like particularly because it's in a lot of movies, etc. But at the same time though, I imagine it to, and just those pictures you post on Twitter, and it's almost like you're pulling your hair out half the time. It looks incredible, but at the same time, it looks stressful and completely manic.
It was, organized chaos. I've heard, people refer to it as. It was, who do you know who you're trading with? I was a really, 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 really big NASDAQ trader. There was a period of time in my career where I was 10%, maybe more of the daily NASDAQ, the big NASDAQ volume and more of the mini volume for my own account. So I was paying $150,000 a month in e-mini commissions when I was trading in the pit, So, and that's not my pit, my pit commissions. So I was a really, really big trader, and I garnered a lot of attention in there. It was stressful. It was fun. It was incredibly fun. It was a lot of fun. If the pits were still open, I don't know what I would do if the pits were still open, but I can tell you that I prefer this. I prefer screen trading. At this point in my life, I can say that I prefer this. I prefer, wearing my Viore sweats and my Lululemon and, whatever, and coming down in front of the screens and, and trading on the screens. It's an easier life. The money on the floor, the money in the NASDAQ it was easier to make big money. It's also easier to lose big money. A story I told last week a week and a half ago, my oldest daughter turned 28. And if I was looking for pictures of her to post on Facebook, or, how people do that for birthdays and things. And I ran across this picture I thought was interesting because it was the day that I lost $1.5 million, January 3rd, 2001. 3 years previous to that, I never dreamed I'd have that kind of money, let alone that kind of money to lose. And I came home, I took off my clothes and I told my ex-wife, I said, I got good news and bad news. What's the good news? Our stock portfolio's back up. What's the bad news? I got to liquidate it and put $1 million $2 million in my account to clear up my debit. Greenspan had, so anyway, it was easy to lose money because, your stops, if anybody trades NASDAQ futures now, you've seen in this year, you've seen illiquid markets where the NASDAQ can run 100 points. Your stop, if you got a stop on the CME, server, your stop can get run 50 points, 100 points. Well, imagine in a pit when everybody can see I'm short 30 contracts and it's $30,000 every 10 points. And everybody knows I'm stuck. Everybody knows Susquehanna's stuck. And there's no liquidity in the market. And I'm bidding the market up 50 points at a crack, 100 points at a crack, and I'm getting, little bits and pieces here. And everybody else is racing me. We rallied 26%. So still the biggest one-day rally in the history of the markets. 26% in 3, 4, 5 minutes. It seemed like 30 seconds, but probably could have been more than that. But not in a matter of minutes, we rallied 26.5%. And I was short most of the way. Almost all. I bought the high actually. I bought 26.5. And that's where I covered my last 18. So anyway, it was easier to make a lot of money, and it was also easier to lose a lot of money too. And out trades, I had to worry about out trades. I think I sold you 50. You think you sold me 50. Well, one of us has got to be wrong. Who is that? You go to the videotape, you watch the tape, and I was wrong. You sold me 50, so I was a buyer. Well, now I'm short 100 contracts, and we're 100 higher. I'm down 10 million. and that would have been bad. So out trades were something that kept me up at night, and I worried about them. I still have bad dreams about them, but I triple checked all my trades, and I had 4 clerks, and my clerks were checking everything all the time. So I was very, very careful about that. But I was a big trader, and I traded 50 lots and 100 lots, and I would take positions like that home. And if the NASDAQ can, rallied 200 points, and I bought a 50 lot at the low of the day, that's 5 million, and the broker decayed it. He doesn't know it at the end of the day. And what am I going to do now? That's 5 million out of my pocket. That hurts.
That's wow.
That shit is stressful, or just being on the wrong side of the market, or over trading. I have a tendency to overtrade. I have a tendency to overtrade. And so, especially on the floor, I get a little pissed off at somebody, or, somebody steals a trade from me and I try to jam it down their throat, and I just pissed away $1,000. I did that constantly.
Well, there's so many questions I want to ask about this, but I'm just intrigued as well. So these, obviously, everyone on the pit, are you mates? Because at the same time, you're competing against each other, but you're also kind of colleagues sat next to each other. That must be quite a weird dynamic.
It is. There were in the NASDAQ pit, there were spreaders. There were people that spread the NASDAQ against the S&P and the mid cap and Russell. They had a whole formula for it. There are still people that trade that spread. And if you know how to make it work, you can trade huge size, and it's very lucrative. I can never figure it out. My brain doesn't work that way. So there were the spreaders. There were more position traders who were also big traders. And then there was traders like me who were more swing and position traders, but used, a process to be able to get those swings and those positions on. I used the opening range in the NASDAQ to be able to drive me between my swing levels and my macro levels, or, the trend levels. So there were a bunch of traders like us. And then there were small traders that were just thieves, that would just, if there was 100 offered at even, and I said, buy them, even bid, everything in that pit at even is mine, and I would end up buying 60 at even. There was 100 offered at even. I said, buy them, even bid, everything that traded there was mine, but I'd buy 60, and 40 of them would all of a sudden disappear into somebody else's pocket. And then I turn around and they'd be, hey, I'll sell 10 at 10. They know that if I'm going to buy the evens, I'm also likely to buy the 10s, the 20s, and 30s. So they're gonna scalp $10,000, $20,000 off me. And I didn't really care much about the price. I cared more about the quantity. So there were those thieves, and those guys would do that shit all the time too. Some I liked, some, because they were just honest about it. So I didn't mind that too much. Some were just schmucks, so, and there were some that, would take an opposite view, and if we usually worked together, like the bigger traders and the guys that made markets, we knew what side of what side of the market we were positioned on. Danny's long, I'm long, Stephen J's long, Emo's long, MPV's long, O&E short. And then, we start bidding the market up. Goldman starts bidding the market up. Witter starts bidding the market up. So we start running. We're going to ask him, you stuck? Yeah, I'm short. How many you need? I'll sell, I'm short 50. I sold you 25. I sold you 25. He's flat. So we would help one another out that way too. One of the best trades I've ever seen. This might give you an idea. His badge was O&E. It was the best trade I've ever seen. We were triple limit down in the NASDAQ. I don't even remember what the percentage was because the percentages have changed. But we had gone to the first limit, locked, closed, opened up at the next limit, nothing traded. We traded down to the next limit, locked, closed. And then we opened up, limit down, third limit. We're open, limit down at the third limit. That's it. I was short. When we traded around the limits, I talked about this on Twitter when we were in the volatility in March and April. When we trade near the limits, I would lighten up. I don't like trading around. I don't like trading in areas I don't have any control. You don't have control on a limit move. So I would lighten up. If I was short 50, I'd stay short 10. So I was short 15. Now there was 1,500 offered at the limit. 1,500 big NASDAQ. That's I don't even know how much money. 1.5 million every 10 points, right? No, every 100 points. So 150,000 every 10 points. There was 1,500 offered at the limit. And this guy turns around and said, buy them all. Buy them all. Holy shit. We rallied 150 points within a minute, 2 minutes. And before you knew it, we were back at the, at the next limit. He made $40 million on that trade, 40 million in that one trade. Buy them all. We rallied 200 points and everybody's, begging, 10 lots, 20 lots, 20. And he's just saying, no, you guys had your chance to buy him. So I'm like, I was down. Now I'm down 100 points on a 15 lot. That's 150,000. I'm thinking, okay, this sucks. I was up a lot of money for the day. So, all right, this sucks. He looked at me and said, you short? Yeah. How many? 15. Goes 15. That's a signal for 15. Sell you 15. All right. Brought him up on my card. He gave me a $150,000 trade. He didn't have to, but I didn't, I worked with him. I gave him plenty of trades. I've worked with him. We worked together. It wasn't collusion. It was nice. It worked. He saved me some money and, and I would do the same for him. There were plenty of other traders that knew that if I was stuck short, they would bid the market up. I had a guy put somebody on a seat, on a headset, to stand next to my clerk to report back what my positions were so he can try to squeeze me out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my clerk would say, you're short 80. So, the market dies down, kind of like we're sitting here now, and I'm short 80. He'd start to bid the market up. Look over, what are you doing? Wrong. Okay, so he bid the market up, and so when my clerk figured it out, he wanted to kill him. This guy was on a membership, on a headset right next to my clerk. I said, keep your mouth shut. Don't say a word. Just report my positions back to me backwards. If I'm short 80, tell me I'm long 80. Really? Yeah. We did that for 2 months before this schmuck figured out what we were doing. So
Brilliant.
And he would tell me, we got to the point that, if I'm short 80, tell me I'm short 160. All right. Or tell me I'm long 160. So we had a whole code. Now I'm long. I got this guy on the other side of the pit bidding the market up for me. So I just sit back and I would tell him, sell me 20, sell me 20 at even, sell me 20 at 10, sell me 20 at 30. So now I turn around and go even at 100. So he thinks I'm stuck in bidding him up. He's 10 bid, 20 bid. And meanwhile, brokers are like, I sold you 20, I sold you 20, I sold you 20. And they're all mine. He's selling them all. He's loading them. Oh, it's so much fun. Figured it out. So just little things like that. We all work together to some extent, and we compete with one another. But if I bought 100, the best trade I ever made, best day I ever had. Is this what you want to hear? I mean, you want to hear?
I am just smiling and loving it. And one thing that's so powerful as well is. And like we were chatting off there, like we got the most incredible job, and I just love it. I love as well, like how like you're smiling as you recount these stories, and I think it's just brilliant to see how much fun you've had, especially when we come. We'll perhaps go into more detail in a minute, but you've had, like you just touched on, some really crappy times as well. But you're just smiling, and these stories are brilliant.
Oh yeah, I created a whole lot of mayhem in my life too. Ego is a trader's worst enemy, and it got to the point where the story I was going to tell you is nothing but ego. I mean, I want you got to tell it. Everyone's going to want to hear it now. You've got to tell it. We rallied out of the opening range like 100 points. So I'm long, and I'm, we're buying them, and I'm bidding them up, and I don't remember what I made on it, maybe 50, 60,000, and and then we came crashing back to the opening range. And when that happens, I look for equidistant swings. So I'm going to be aggressively selling them, and I started to sell everything. I mean, I'm selling everything. And we broke like 250 points, 200 points. So we got down to, a level that I'll call a macro level, like a level where I'm going to flatten. So I'm short a lot, and I'm down to 200, 220 or something, which was a big position for me. I'm down ticking. I'll sell one at even, one at 90, one at 80. And we're probing the market, looking for stops. Same thing the algos do. Everybody complains about the algos hunting their stops. Finably, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't like when people complain about the algos hunting shit. I mean, that's what the markets do. So anyway, one at 80, one at 9, one at 70. And then, and the broker's eyes would get really big, like, I'm getting close to the stops. One at 60. What do they have? Bid. Half on 500. Sold. And I thought, you want them? Yeah, I fucking wrote them up. It was like the scene in that movie Trading Places. Everybody in the pit was short. I made sure that everybody was short. So, every time I sold 50, I bought 5. I sold 20, I bought 2. Whatever. So we got down there, and I'm long now, 260, 270 contracts. Sold you 5, sold you 5. So everybody's in my face. Sold you 5. Nah, you get nothing. Sold you 20. So it was great. When I was done, I kept 50, and then the market starts rallying, and I gave a broker a scratch stop. And I walked out of the pit. I needed to go. I just needed to go. I have a cigarette and digest. It was a huge, huge, hugely profitable day. I walked, and the 50 lot, I ended up taking that for 100 points too. So now I walk out of the pit, and the whole pit starts clapping for me. Everybody made money off those markets. Everybody made money off that trade. Everybody, I shared my longs all the way up. I shared my shorts all the way down. And when I bought a 500 lot on this, I didn't want 500 contracts. I wasn't that big. I'm not a bank. I shared those with everybody in the pit. And I did that probably too much. I probably shared way too much. In the hopes that if I ever got stuck, that everybody would look out for me. And to some degree or another, that happened, my $1.5 million loss day. The next day I was debit $650,000. Nobody trades debit that kind of money, but my firm let me trade debit that kind of money because of the reputation that I had as, an honest man and a man of integrity and a man of honesty. But, also because they knew I had the money. It was just going to take a few days to put it in my account. So the next day I came in, and the deal was, if you lose money, you got to leave the pit. You cannot turn the $650,000 debit into anything more. Don't try to trade it back. Just go in there. It was important to me that they didn't smell blood in the water. The other, that there was rumors that I lost 10 million, 20 million, and, wasn't the case. But, I had to be in the pit that day. I had to show my face. So I made $150,000 the next day trading 5 lots, and another 160 the next day trading 5 lots. And I cleared up my debit, and I went on. That day that I was describing actually happened in 2001. So I went on to having the best year of my career. I started off the year down 1.5 million, and I still ended up having the best year of my career at that point. So, those were great days. I got to tell you, Sam, I don't think I'd be alive. If that continued. I mean, there was just no way to sustain that kind of life. I tweeted last week that, and this is on the screens, right? I mean, where my life is so much easier and better, but this is a young person's game. An old DMARC trader was in the NASDAQ. He stood next to me, CGX, one day, leaned into me. It was like 9:30 in the morning. We're open an hour, and he said, "I gotta go. This is exhausting." It's a young man's game. I couldn't believe that he was, leaving the pit. You're leaving the pit? He was in his late 40s. Anyway, those were great days, and I like recounting them because they're fun, and I think everybody finds it interesting. And I'm very grateful that I got to be part of that history. I would have liked to have caught another 10 years of it, but I'm grateful I caught the, 5 or 6 really good years that I did. But I have to tell you, I love trading on the screens too. This year has been tremendously profitable for me, and I love trading volatility. I don't like trading these dreaded. I've been calling this a dreaded creeping rally. I can't stand trading these dreaded creeping rallies. I've got a small swing position, and I'm just leaving that on until the market tells me to exit. We're reaching some critical levels. I'd like to see all-time highs in the S&P, but this is. The earlier this year in that volatility, I'm at home. I've got my feet up on my desk. I'm trading exceedingly well. I took the majority of that break, from 61.66 down to 49.51 is where I flattened. It was tremendously profitable, and it was exhausting. I don't have that kind of energy. I don't have that bandwidth anymore. Today I tweeted about the 15-handle rotations that the S&P trades in every day. From the opening range, it rotates 15 points. The NASDAQ I don't trade NASDAQ anymore. The NASDAQ rotates 60, 65 points every single day. I don't trade those 15 handle rotations anymore. I just don't have the energy, I've got last year I ended up coming very close to dying with AFib, which caused me to go into heart failure, which caused my heart rate to crash to 15, 17 beats a minute for an hour, and that was I don't need that kind of shit happening to me. I've got 5 kids, and my youngest is 15. I want to see my grandkids and all my grandkids. So it means trading is a drug. It's a drug, and I got to wean myself off.
I mean, that's part of the issue, but I'm so keen to dive into, because
anything
to start the year, because I guess, because I always think about, like, we're all quite excited. It's a new year. This is my year. I'm going to smash the year. And yours, obviously, going back to that 1.5 million day, started as bad as it could be. But to bounce back, not the next day, the day, I think that's incredible. So, I mean, what were you telling yourself that morning before you came back? You just lost 1.5 yesterday, and you're under pressure. What are you telling yourself?
Show your face. It was important that I showed my face. That's actually kind of a memorable thing too. So, we just rallied 26%. Greenspan cut interest rates 50 basis points in the very first trading day of the year, which is what caused that. So imagine Powell cutting rates 50% on January 4th this year, when the first trading day. Nobody's trading. The volume was low, volatility was low. I was the only big trader in there, and before you know it, we rallied 26%. So, the volatility was big the next couple of days. The pit was full. People came home, from vacations early, and it was important that everybody knew that I wasn't defeated, and I needed to prove to myself that the market wasn't going to defeat me, and that these assholes around me couldn't defeat me either. So I sat in there and I quietly traded my 5 lots, and people looked out for me and traded with me all day long. I mean, and it didn't take a lot of skill to be able to do that day. And at the end of the day, there was a compliance officer, Mark Schulte, who was standing on the other side of the pit, or maybe it was Bill Strubing, was standing on the other side of the pit. And he looked at me and he said, "You okay?" And the bell had just rung. We had just closed, and I cry all the time. My tears are, very close behind my eyes. My eyes welled up. There's no crying in the pit, but my eyes welled up, because I realized one of the most important lessons I've ever learned is that the market can't beat me, and neither can any of these people. Nobody can beat me. I learned that day. The only person that can beat me is me, and I went on to beat me, but nobody else did. And then that dovetails into one of my main messages on Twitter is, if we're going to be long-term profitable traders, we must take radical responsibility, not just for our trading, but for our lives. It's not the algorithm's fault. It's not the, whatever kind of nonsensical nonsense that people are going to blame. It's not, it's my fault. I overtraded. I didn't take I didn't take the good setup. I didn't take the right setup. I hesitated, and then I missed the move and I chased it, or I lost a little bit of money and I chased it. And, I don't do those things. My life is a lot simpler and a lot easier, because I know that nobody can beat me and the market can't beat me. The market doesn't care about me. The information that the market gives me is neutral by nature. It doesn't favor me and it doesn't hurt me. The market's not out to get me.
That's powerful. And I guess as well, it sounds like you just went back to your system, your way of trading, and just perhaps get smaller and just, I'm going to get back to work and just carry on and try and think like nothing happened.
That was another thing that was easier on the floor, was sizing up, sizing up and sizing down. If there was huge volume, huge order flow, and at that time it was easier to trade bigger, because if I put on 50, I knew that I can get out. If I put on 100, I can get out. If there was no volume, no liquidity, then I would cover my positions and I would trade very, very small. On the screens, it's very difficult to replicate. The S&P traded 1.25 million contracts today. I can guarantee you that the majority of that volume was rollover volume and not price discovery volume. I know that because I know the cycles in the market. So I know when to trade small and when not to trade. I know how to after years of working hard to figure this out, I've learned how to size up in an electronic environment. And that my stats don't matter. And I think that so many young traders worry about their win rate. I've backed traders with 90% win rates that can't make 85% win rates that can't make money. I have, with my own dough, I have backed those traders because they don't know how to increase their size, decrease their size, and they don't know when not to trade. I know those things. As I've gotten older, I've learned those things from beating my head over, beat myself over my head with my ego. Supercars and all of these streamers and people that are posting pictures of supercars and things, that's all ego. And that shit will end in tears. It always, always, always does. Big, gigantic houses and watches and all that shit. I mean, I drive nice cars and I've got a beautiful home. I got a couple of them, but I'm not putting them on fucking Twitter. I'm not putting them on Twitter. I'm going to talk about my, what I do to sustain that. I'm not going to talk about that because it doesn't matter. That shit comes and goes. Yeah. What matters is my faith in God. The fact that God has always remained faithful to me, even when I wasn't to Him. The love of my love of my life, my wife of 20 years, and the mother of my 3 younger kids, and the wonderful stepmother to my 2 older ones, stood by me when I blew myself up, and didn't tell her until we were broke. Honey, we got to sell the house. What do you mean? We're broke. Oh, where are we going? I don't know, but we gotta go.
Yeah, it's incredible as well, the power of that support network as well, because I think like my partner, for example, like I will lean on her after, a good day, bad day, whatever. I'll speak to her. She always has a way of smoothly grounding me. Yeah. Like nothing, like your day, that doesn't matter. Whatever, up, down, it doesn't matter. And then we carry on and I'm back to business as normal. It's so important.
Why is that? Why do you figure that is?
What do I think of what? Sorry, that it's
why is she able to ground you that easy when your head might be spinning?
Well, I think it's I know I'm quite emotional by nature, and I think sometimes you just need that second perspective to be like, yeah, and what? You've had a good day. I don't care. Go and do the groceries. Go make dinner. Whatever it is. It's like
she's not defining you by your P&L. Why you might be.
No, she's not, and I think that is sometimes the issue. I think like we all do, when you go back to like those supercars, and that's how we define ourselves. And then we see some of our peers doing that, and we define ourselves like, I don't have a supercar. And it's like, but actually, and I always reflect, and I think like touching on, we're doing the best job ever. I can like pretty hand on my heart say I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. Got a great friendship network. The house is. We're working on it, and like there's so many things I'm like, I got so much to be grateful for, and I think that's powerful, and that's what drives me every day.
Well, it's freedom. Yeah, it's freedom, Sam, and that's what we're traders for. We're trading for freedom, and what you just described is ultimately freedom. You're happy, you're joyful, you've got meaningful relationships, you've got rich, deep, and meaningful relationships. That's freedom. And you've got money in the bank and you've got money coming in. That's freedom. You've got control of your time. That's freedom. That's what we're trading for. That's what we're trading for. That's what lasts. That's what sustains. And that's what you can build on and grow. Everything else is, rusts and it breaks and, it devalues and whatever, and it's worthless. And I've had it all. I've done all that shit. I've done it all. I've made every mistake. I put that in my Twitter bio. I've made every mistake so you don't have to. And I've invented some along the way, many that you will never even Please listen to me.
Well, and to be fair, and you have, like I said, you have such a great way of doing it. And the only thing with mistakes is, I think sometimes it's one of those things. And I remember when I first started, I remember people giving me advice, and I'd be like, I don't need that. And then there's that arrogance, and we all think that's not going to be my mistake, but actually. It is a lot of the time, and we can learn so much from other people's mistakes.
That made me think of these 3 guys that I was a partner with in these clearing for this FCM. Mickey Hoppin, John Overman, and Mike Minetti, and they were older guys. They're all still alive, thank God. We had a bunch of conversations. Don't spend it. This business, I can guarantee you that this business as we know it is going to change, especially for the people that are trading these funded companies, So if you're making money, bank it, Save it. Put that money away. Don't blow it on shit that's going to rust, break, or devalue. Because and they would tell me this business is going to change. Save the money. Don't be blowing it. Don't buy another house. Don't buy a bigger car. Don't just save it. And in 2003, I got divorced in 2002 and 2003. I took most of the year off between that from January to almost to the fall. And, I took the winter and summer off, and I came back, and the markets had changed a great deal. The NASDAQ ranges were 300 points and now 30, 40 points. We were down, we had broken from 48.18 all the way down to like 800, and we were trading near the low of that move, and there was no volume, no movement, no nothing. And what volume we did have was now on the screens. So, things changed, and I got divorced, and in my divorce, 6% of my net worth went away. That's a huge hit. And the business changed, and now, not making money for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And, and then 07 happens. Well, 08, I had a prop group, real prop, not these funding companies, and my mother died in June of 08. My sister died in October of 08. My mother-in-law died in March of 09. I missed that trade. I was in the hogs by that time, but I missed that trade, and I had my own prop group that failed, and I had a ton of investments in commercial real estate, residential real estate, and car dealership. That was the dumbest thing I'd ever invested in. Restaurants and bars and all kinds of stuff, and all done, all out of business. Millions of dollars, poof, gone overnight. My mother gone overnight. My sister gone overnight. My mother-in-law gone. My life changed. It was drastic. I still had money left. I still had a few million left. And then by 2011, MF Global failed. October of 11, I was in the hogs. Trading hogs and resurrected my career again. I was doing very well, putting money away, and I had a ton of money in my account. I had a lot of spreads on, and all of a sudden that money's gone, and I had no floor access because MF Global failed and no idea what was going on. And everything I didn't deal with in 08 and 09, even some residual feelings from my divorce 10 years earlier, came crashing down on me. And now I'm trading on the screens, and I'm trading 100 lots and 200 lots like a goof. And I'm losing 100,000, 50,000, 200,000. I'm liquidating in retirement accounts, and I'm putting money into my account, chasing money, chasing ego, all of this shit until I had nothing left. My wife and I were looking for nickels and quarters. We had $20 left one weekend. We had all 5 kids. We had food in the house, $20 for the weekend. I put $10 in gas in the car, and I bought a pack of cigarettes for $10, and I had nothing left. And my wife said, "Will you go buy some milk?" We didn't have any money for milk. I thought we had milk in the house, no milk. So we looked in my Mercedes. I had a Mercedes S-Class. We were looking in like a year-old Mercedes. We're looking through seats, looking for nickels and quarters and dimes. That was a low point of my life. I couldn't afford to buy my kids milk. Now, Monday I could sell the car, or I could sell another watch. But Saturday, I had no milk. What have I done? What have I done? What have I done? Who am I? Existential question. Who am I and where am I going? Why am I created? I remember listening a year and a half later, or a year later, we sold our house, and I moved into my father's house on the south side of Chicago, in a house I paid off in 2003, and we were living there, and my son's 8th birthday. My son is now 19. He trades next to me. He's a college baseball pitcher, but in the summertime, he trades next to me, and he's very good. Gabriel was 8, and it was his birthday, and I was smoking and drinking a lot all night long, listening to Johnny Cash's song "Hurt," and just what have I done? What have I done to my family? I've destroyed my family. I had nothing left, and I had no self-confidence left. I had no belief in myself left. I barely believed in God, but my wife loved me, and my kids loved me, and that was enough for me. So I got some money back from MF Global, and we went and blew it like a couple of hillbillies on a house. We rented a house in Key Biscayne, Florida, and spent the winter there. By that time I knew I was getting more money back, but still, we got 80,000 back and spent 60 of it on a house for the winter that we rented off the coast of Miami. And that's where we decided, what do I do? Do I go back to school? Do I go to law school? I'm 40. At the time, I was 44 years old. Do I go back to law? Do I go to law school? Do I go back to school, become a therapist? I thought about being I thought, I can't be a priest. So what's the next best thing? But my wife was a clerk on the floor for 18 years. And she told me, go trade, go figure it out. You're the king of the NASDAQ when I met you, go figure it out. You can, if anybody can do this, you can. So I opened up an account. I put $5,000 into it. I went and talked to Scott Gordon, who was chairman of RCG at the time. I said, Scott, I don't want to put $50,000 in my account. I want to put 5 in there. I don't want to make $50,000 mistakes. And just don't go debit. I didn't want to tell him I only had $5,000 to put in my account. And I traded 1 lot, 2 lots. That's it. What worked for me on the floor? Let's figure out a way of trading on the screens. 1 lots became 2 lots. And I still, my only goal was to make $100 or $200, $300. That was it. Because at that point, if I can make 500, 1,000, 2,000 for the week, I can provide for my family. So that was my only goal, was to be green, $50, $100, because I also knew that if I could make 100, 200 consistently, then that $200 a day would turn into 2,000. And I also knew that 2,000 would turn into 20,000. It's just a matter of scaling it up. So I just sat there and traded 1 lots and traded breakouts from the opening range. And I started to put together, how the algorithms were trading just like we did. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is the entities that create the movement and create the volume. They're not humans anymore. AI has already changed. I said this earlier. AI has already changed business. So how do I surf that? How do I stay out of the way of the algos? Just like a 1 lot, 2 lot trader would stay out of my way and let, they would, if I was bidding the market up, they would get long and then they would just, ride it up as much as they wanted to until the rally ended. So how can I do that on the screens? Let the algorithms do the work like I used to do on the floor. How can I learn how to do that again? 2 lots became 4 lots and 4 lots, and I gradually been able to scale that up.
That's amazing, Ned. I think what's powerful about that is, I think like a lot of people try to rush the process, and I think like it would be really easy in your position to be like, I used to do stupid size and now I'm back to square one. But actually, that really set the foundations actually for that recovery, and I think that's a real testament. Like you touched on having an ego earlier, which I haven't, which you put completely to one side and were like, hang on, family's important. I'm going to build this up. And I think that's a testament to any of our viewers as well. Like whatever position you're in, as long as you've got like a chip in a chair and you're prepared to grind and prepared to work it out, there's a chance for a comeback. And
every day, if you have breath in your lungs and a beating heart, money in your account, you have another version. You have another day to become and be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. If you got breath in your money, beating heart, lungs, and money in your account, you can make it work. I wasn't going to make back my, I didn't set out to make back my money. My ego was crushed. I set out to really discover who I was at that time. And, my faith in God grew, and, I had to rely on the love that my wife had for me. I don't like looking at my picture. I don't like looking at pictures, from that time, like 2013, 2012, 13, even 14, I look so stressed out and unhappy. I was bloated, it just wasn't in good shape. But gradually, like we were saying, you and I were talking offline, I started to walk. I was waking up to trade the open, Europe's open. I was trading the DAX, see if that would work. I was trading, Asian open and see what worked. I wanted to trade the opening ranges. So what worked? Well, I quickly realized I was making money trading the US open, Europe open. I stopped doing it. But now I'm up at 3 a.m. So, now what? So I joined Planet Fitness for $10 a month. I couldn't afford that. And I started to pray the rosary every morning again. And then I started to work out again. And in the afternoons, I didn't want to sit in front of the screens all day. So I started to walk. That led into running. That led into me quit smoking. That led into me, to stop drinking. And it led me into lifting heavy things and reversing my age. I think I looked older at 45 than I do at 55 or 50. I'm 56. I think I looked older at 46.
That was one of the first things I said to you, is I think considering, and I mean, like now everyone's got a taste of all of that life. I think you look incredible for your age and for all of that. I mean, you must have picked up a few gray hairs the day after some of those issues. Yeah. You can be forgiven for a few now, for sure. But yeah, I mean,
like my cousin accused me of frosting my hair last summer. What are you talking about?
I look incredible. And I think like what you talk about there as well, like I think like that's so powerful how like something positive in your life can lead to something else being positive as well. And something as simple as going for a walk, suddenly leads to I'm going to eat a bit better. I'm going to find my faith in God again. Yeah. And whatever it is, it's just one good thing leads to another. And I think like that's such a powerful message as well, because so easy to beat yourself up, so easy to be negative, and all negative does is breed. When you're negative, who are you going to meet? You're going to meet negative people. When you're positive, who are you going to meet? You're going to meet positive people. I'm not saying it's not easy, but there is quite a simple formula to it.
It's easy to build. It's easy to build negative momentum that we don't see coming. You know, my weaknesses are in the background doing push-ups, getting stronger when I take my eye off of them, because I start thinking of myself as something other than what I am. You know, when I let my ego take control, my weaknesses are getting stronger. They're going to jump on me. So I'm always on the lookout in my life. The way that I live my life is, you know, it's kind of regimented and it's disciplined, but I wake up at the same time every morning. I go to bed at the same time every night, because I don't want to create that negative momentum that I don't see coming. And, you know, the positive momentum is not always so easy to build. You know, it means that we need to do things differently. If 90% of traders fail, or 90+% of traders fail, why do I want to think like them, act like them, live like them, trade like them? I don't. I do things differently. I trade differently. I'm right out of my trades. If I buy 60-30s and they go 60-30 offer, I'm out. If they go 30 bid, I'll put them back on. I'm not going to buy 60-30s and put in a 10 stop ever. Never. You know, I'm right out. The trade works immediately, or it doesn't. And in trading futures, the market gives us, you know, that sort of instant gratification. So anyway, positive momentum breeds, you know, more positive momentum. And you know how many times in my life I thought, you know, I just wish I can think differently. Why can't I think differently? You know, feel better about myself, or, you know, feel more confident, or, I've learned through my life that if I change my actions, then my thoughts will follow. So if I can change the way that I live, and I can change the way that I start physical activity. If I can work out, walk, and run, I'm gonna have time to listen to podcasts. What podcasts do I choose to listen to? or books on tape. What books do I choose to listen to? Well, I've got more time, so 20 minutes to pray the rosary. I got my rosary in my pocket. That keeps me in conscious contact with God throughout the day. That sort of change in activity eventually changes your thoughts, or changes my thoughts.
Absolutely. I think that's such a perfect way to, I said to you it'd be about an hour, and I thank you so much for your time. I think that's such a good spot to finish it on. I have just loved, honestly, I think you're such a great guy, and I've absolutely loved this conversation. I've just been smiling the whole time. It's just a real, honestly, I think it'd be a good one to make a movie about one day, honestly. Hopefully some director watches this. I know and says, right, we got to make a movie.
More. There's gangsters. I got a whole lot of mafia stories that.
Well, everyone needs to come back for part 2. Then we run this back in the future. Pax, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real honor and a privilege. Just lastly, for our viewers, if they want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Oh, you can go to Twitter. I'm at PaxTrader777, at Pax, Pax Trader 777. You can follow me there. You can go to my website at www.thepaxgroup.org if you want to learn how to trade S&P futures and NASDAQ futures, bond futures, gold futures, crude. Sometimes I trade crude. I haven't been trading crude, but I'm prepared to trade crude, but I haven't done so. S&P is my primary market. NASDAQ every so often, 30-year bond and gold lately have been the markets I've been more active in. So you can go to www.thepaxgroup.org or PaxTrader777. And my kids are trying to get me to do like Instagram videos and things. But
TikToks and Instagram, isn't it?
Yeah. You get pain in the ass.
That's what you need when your kids to do your marketing for you. I think you need someone to do that for you. It's quite difficult. But thank you again. I'm just
I mean, I've just had such a blast, and thank you so much. And,
No, 50 Cent.
and it is, I know obviously there's tons of sadness in the story, but I think it is truly Hollywood. It's a happy ending, and you seem incredibly happy now, and I think it's just such a fantastic story. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
I look forward to running it back and finding out about some mafia gangsters. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and peace. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of Trading Takes. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please check out some of others with some great traders. Thank you for watching.